Welcome to Software Freedom Day, which is part of the free software movement, the campaign for software that respects users' freedom. With software, there are just two possibilities. Either the users control the program, or the program controls the users. The first case we call free software, free as in freedom, so that would be azad. Because in order for the users to have control over the program, they need certain specific freedoms. There are 4 essential freedoms that make the criterion for free software. Freedom 0 is the freedom to run the program as you wish. Freedom 1 is the freedom to study the source code of the program and change it so it does your computing the way you wish. Freedom 2 is the freedom to help others. That's the freedom to make and distribute exact copies of the program when you wish. And freedom 3 is the freedom to contribute to your community. That's the freedom to make and distribute copies of your modified versions when you wish. Freedoms 0 and 1 give users individual control, one user at a time, because through these freedoms you can make the program do what you want it to do and then use it the way you wish. But individual freedom is not enough. First of all, most computer users don't know how to program. They don't have the skills to exercise freedom 1. But even if you know how to program, there's still so much software in the world, you couldn't possibly study and master all that software. You couldn't possibly write all the changes you might want. That's more than one human being can do. So we need collective control as well. Collective control means that any group of people can work together and exercise control over their version of the program. And it's up to you which groups you participate in. So these freedoms 2 and 3, to redistribute exact copies and to distribute modified versions, they give us collective control. Of course, the freedoms only give this result if they are adequate. In order to be adequate, these freedoms have to apply to all areas of life, including business, by the way, because business is a normal part of life, and businesses should control their computing too. However, note that of these 4 things that you're free to do, you don't have to do them. They're not obligatory. They're not required. So, for instance, with Freedom 0, you're free to run the program as you wish, but you're not required to. You could decide not to run the program. With Freedom 1, you're free to study and change the source code, but it's not required. You can use the program exactly the way you got it. With Freedom 2, you're free to make copies and distribute them to others. You're free to give them away. You're free to sell them, but you don't have to. At any given occasion, it's up to you whether to distribute a copy. And likewise, with Freedom 3, if you have made a modified version, you're free to distribute copies of that. But it's not required. You can do that when you wish. But what happens if the program doesn't come with all of these freedoms? Then it's proprietary software, non-free software, user subjugating software. Because if the users don't control the program, then the program controls the users. And the owner controls the program. And through the program, the owner exercises unjust power over the program's users. So every non-free program generates a system of unjust power. And that's why non-free software should not exist. The aim of the free software movement is all software should be free so that all the users of software can be free. Our goal is to first escape from non-free software and then help everyone else escape until all users of software are free. the most important field for moving to free software is education. And this is because educational activities, which include all schools of all levels, have a mission, a social mission, and this is to educate good citizens of a strong, capable, cooperating, independent, and free society. And in the field of computing, this means graduating people who are skilled in using free software, who have become accustomed to using free software, and thus are ready to participate in a free society in their computing. Teaching a non-free program is simply wrong because that means implanting dependence. Schools must never do that. But there are more reasons why educational activities must teach exclusively free software. For instance, there's the education of the best programmers. Some people are natural-born programmers. At the age of 10 to 13, they become fascinated with programming, and they want to learn how everything is done. If they use a program, they want to know, how does it do this? But when the student asks the teacher, how does it do this? If the program is proprietary, the teacher can only respond, I'm sorry, there's no way we can find out. It's a secret. Which means education is not allowed. A proprietary program is knowledge withheld from the student. It's the enemy of the spirit of education and therefore must never be tolerated in a school. But if the program is free, the teacher can explain whatever he knows and then give each student a copy of the source code of the program saying, read this and you'll understand everything. And those students will read it because they're fascinated and they yearn to understand everything. And the teacher can say to them, if you come across any point you can't figure out by yourself, show it to me and we can figure it out together. And this way, our natural-born programmer learns a vital lesson. That piece of code is not clear. You shouldn't write it that way. That's an example of the way not to write code. And our natural-born programmers need to learn that because they need to develop into good programmers. And the way you learn to be a good programmer is to learn all the things that are not clear so that you won't write the code that way. And that way your code will be clear. How do you learn to write good, clear code? By reading lots of code and writing lots of code. Only free software gives the opportunity to read lots of code of large programs that we really use. And then you have to write lots of code, which means writing code in large programs. But to do that, you have to start small. Which means you have to write small changes in large programs. That's how you start writing code for large programs. And once you get better, you can write large changes. And then maybe you could write an entire new large program starting from zero, although that's a rare thing. More often, you're working on improving an existing large program. But only free software gives you the opportunity to write small or large changes in large programs that we really use. Any school can offer this opportunity, but only if it's a free software school. However, there's an even deeper reason. For the sake of moral education, education in citizenship. It's not enough for schools to teach facts and methods. Schools have to teach the spirit of cooperation, the spirit of helping other people, and the habit of doing so. So, every class must have the following rule. Students, if you bring a program to class, you may not keep it for yourself. You must share copies with everyone in the class, including the source code in case there's someone here who wants to learn. Because this class is a place where we share our knowledge. Therefore, bringing non-free software to class is not permitted. The school must set a good example which means following its own rule. It must bring only free software to class and share copies with everyone in the class. If you have any connection with a school, it's your mission, your responsibility to campaign for that school to move to free software. Now, our community has been weakened, sad to say, in a number of ways, because most of the users of the GNU+Linux operating system don't think about the issue in terms of freedom. So they have been willing to throw away their freedom for mere convenience. You will find, for instance, that there are over 1,000 different distributions of the GNU+Linux system. Most of them refer to the system as Linux, which is not true. But more importantly, most of them contain non-free programs as well. And by offering the user non-free programs, what is the message they convey? Their message is convenience above freedom. And that message is going to lead people to surrender and lose their freedom. Because the only way you keep your freedom is by fighting for it. So, if you want to reach freedom in your computing, you need to install a GNU/Linux distribution which is entirely free software. And there are a few of them. You can find the list in gnu.org/distros.